Hello, I'm back with another Pauper EDH deck tech. If you haven't played Pauper EDH, it's like Commander, except for these rules. I highly recommend it. Oh my gosh, don't look at the card spoilers. Jesus, wow. I'm just antsy. I've also got 3 other videos going through decks in the Pauper EDH format, so check those out for a nice little bit of variety. But today we're talking about Sigil Captain. Sigil Captain is what they call a white weenies commander. He's a 4-cost 3/3 that says whenever a creature comes into play under your control, if that creature is a 1/1, put 2 +1/+1 counters on it. So he turns your 1/1s into 3/3s when they come in. It's technically the slightly worse version of this card. I can't remember the name. It's a unicorn guy. And I don't care because look at him, dude. I was scrolling through Scryfall, looking at all of the rhinoceros subtype creatures, as you do, and stumbled upon this guy immediately with the art. I was like, I have to build him. Like, look at that. He's just handing out those participation trophies to all his 1/1 buddies. So before we go through the actual card list, I want to just real quick talk about game plan. Now, normally when I play this deck, I will play a land, then say pass 3 times in a row, and then on a 4th turn, I'll cast Sigil Captain. The reason for this is that I'm usually not that concerned in the first 3 turns with having blockers in Pauper EDH. There are decks that are exceptions to this, and you can play differently against those decks, but this deck struggles with draw because it plays a lot of 1/1s. And so I'll want to get a handful of 1/1s and then get the maximum value out of that hand on turn 5 by casting 2 or 3 of them on turn 5 and 6 and beginning to swing out with these big 3/3s that are coming in with tons of utility and tons of value. So we're waiting until turn 4 or 5 to cast him and potentially throw out some 1/1s. The only 1/1s that I'll cast before Sigil Captain are dorks that'll help me get to Sigil Captain a little bit sooner. But even then, I'll consider it looking at the board state, whether I want to do that. So right off the bat, here's our 1/1s. Starting off with Fists of Ironwood, it's actually an aura that makes 2 Saproling tokens when it enters, and then it gives a creature trample. We've got Soltari Foot Soldier, who has Shadow. So it can't block, but you got a 3/3 unblockable. That puts basically anyone on the board on a clock. Ankle Biter, it's a classic 1/1 for 1 with Death Touch. And Elfsworn Giant is a little bit different. He's going to yield continual value. He himself is a 5/3 for 5, but whenever a land you control enters, create a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token. Whenever I play a land, I'm getting a 3/3, effectively, if my commander is out. Avacyn's Pilgrim, a classic little 1-mana dork here that gives us white, which matters because Sigil Captain has 2 white pips in his cost, so we do want to have a little bit more white mana. Chatterstorm I adore. If you get a handful of 1-drops in Chatterstorm, then you can potentially throw out a giant, super wide board of creatures in a single turn. Quirion Elves, just another dork. Tomb's Traveler, he's a 1/1 that makes a 1/1 when he dies. Sakura Tribe. Steve, Jesus. He can sack to make a land, you know him. I don't know why I'm explaining what Sakura Tribe Elder does. Hunted Witness, it's very similar to Doom's Traveler. The difference is that he creates a soldier creature token with lifelink when he dies. That lifelink is actually way better on a 3/3, turns out. Almighty Brushwag, if you don't know it, you know it now. It's a 1/1 you can pump for 4 mana to give it +3/+3. And it already has trample. So essentially, he's a 1 mana that can turn into a 6/6 if he comes in during Sigil Captain's Reign of Terror. Garrison Cat, the 1/1 that creates a 1/1 when he dies. Now this one I have gotten more value out of than maybe anything else. It's a flying double strike 1/1 for 3 mana. It's a cat, which is funny. I didn't notice that till this exact second. It's a cat knight, in case that matters to you. And now this one's really fun. Sprout Swarm is a 2-mana instant with Convoke and Buyback 3, and it says put a 1/1 green Saproling creature token into play. Now late game, if you've got a bunch of mana open, you've got, maybe 4 or 5 creatures on the board, this is the card you want to draw because you're going to get a ton of value casting this on someone's end step, buying it back, casting it again on your turn, and using that Convoke to do so while you've held up blockers for a turn or 2. You all of a sudden have a giant board, and that's just beautiful. You want these constant sources of value in a deck like this that has such a low curve. Copper Mirror, he's a 2-mana dork. Oh, it just got bright outside. Thank you finally, Gather the Townsfolk. It's a 2-mana sorcery that creates 2 1/1s, but if you have 5 or less life, you create 5 instead. So you could hang on to this one if you have guts. If you have like Balls of Steel, hang on to this one, get those 5 3/3s for 2 mana. It's going to be some nice value. Or, I mean, hey, 2 3/3s for 2 mana isn't that bad either. Rousing of Souls, this is either this is kind of an all or nothing spell. Each player reveals the top card of his or her library. For each non-land card revealed this way, you put a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying onto the battlefield, then each player draws a card. So technically you're going to have about a 60% chance with each player of hitting this. So at a pot of 4, you'll usually hit 2 if people are running the like 38-ish lands in their decks. Thankfully it replaces itself in your hand, even though that's a global draw where each player draws. But every now and then you'll hit the perfect Yahtzee where everyone reveals a non-land card. You put a 1/1 for each of those onto the battlefield, and that's going to feel pretty good for 3 mana. Werebear is beautiful. This one's actually perfect because it does usually come in as a 1/1 for 2 mana. That is a mana dork, taps for green. But then once you hit that threshold, it gets +3/+3, and that's just good value. Again, great value. Worms Crossing Patrol. It's a 1/1 for 1 with Myriad. Now, Myriad says, whenever this creature attacks, for each opponent other than the defending player, you make a copy of him that's attacking that player. So those copies come in, they get the counters from Sigil Captain. It creates up to 2 3/3s every time it attacks. Usually your opponents will realize that's a huge amount of value, but the person that's blocking Worms Crossing Patrol kind of doesn't want to kill it because those tokens come in attacking his or her opponents as well. So there's actually a weird amount of politics with this one, more than you'd expect. Side note, if you're able to attack someone who has a, let's say, a 2/4 as a blocker, just say, hey, can I keep swinging this at you turn after turn? It'll send free 3/3s at your opponents, and that's just value. And it'll never get through. You can always block it and not suffer any consequences. Ancestral Blade. I had to look up whether this one works. When it enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 white soldier creature token, then attach Ancestral Blade to it. Equipped creature gets +1/+1. So it's essentially a 4/4 for 2, and later on you can equip it to other things if that soldier does die. What's interesting is the soldier enters as a 1/1, even though it gets +1/+1 from the sword after the sword is attached. So it'll enter, the trigger will go on the stack, it'll attach, it'll finish resolving this whole thing, and then the Sigil Captain trigger will resolve, putting the counters on the creature. In case you were wondering, you probably weren't even stressing about that, but I had to check. That's just how my brain works. Pretty similar to that other Convoke card. Scatter the Seeds is a 5 mana with Convoke. Put 3 1/1 green sapling creature tokens into play. Nice, and it's an instant. So you're doing this on the end step of the player to your right. Now you've got 3 3/3s that they were not expecting. You might have been fully tapped out as well, and you just convoke using all of your creatures that you had. Now, Presence of Gond is another enchantment that allows the enchanted creature to tap to create a 1/1 Elf Warrior creature token. Now, I'm often tempted to put this on Sigil Captain since I know he won't be attacking. He's too valuable to throw at anybody. But it also makes him too valuable of a target for removal, and then this will just go in the bin. So generally I will put this on some like vanilla 1/1 just to hold him up as a blocker, and then tap it at the end step of the player to my right, just like with the other spell I was talking about, and create that 1/1 that becomes a 3/3. Beloved Princess is hilarious. It's a 1 mana 1/1 with lifelink, and Beloved Princess can't be blocked by creatures with power 3 or greater. So unless they've got combat tricks up their sleeve, you essentially have an unblockable 3/3 with lifelink for 1 mana. That makes me laugh. And I promise we're almost to the bottom of these 1/1s, but it's the entire deck basically. It's Gemhide Sliver. It can tap for 1 mana of any color. There's no other slivers in the deck, but if you're playing against a Pauper Sliver deck, which I've actually designed before, so it's a thing, I guess you're giving them all the ability to tap for mana. Slight downside, but then we've got the other Myrrh. Is it a Myrrh or a Mirror? Tell me in the comments while you're liking and subscribing. It's a mana dork that can create white mana, and it's a 1/1. Healer's Hawk. Incredible value from this card. I've done unspeakable things to my friends with a 1 mana flying lifelink 3/3. That's pretty gross. By the way, I'm just translating each of these 1/1s into 3/3s because you're gonna hold him in your hand if Sigil Captain's not on the battlefield. You are not going to cast any of these until he's out. Of course, raise the alarm. It just creates 2 1/1s as an instant. Doing anything at instant speed, turns out, it's good. Now, you've probably noticed that this guy is pretty central to the game plan. When he's not out, these 1/1s are just little dumb idiots. So we do pack a little bit of protection here. We've got Shelter. For 2 mana, you can give a creature protection until end of turn from whatever color you want, and then you draw a card. Stave Off, similar, it just doesn't draw a card. Benevolent Blessing, it's an enchantment that flashes onto the creature, gives them that protection, and that way the protection lingers. If you're playing against like 2 black decks or something and you flash on protection from black, yeah, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. It wastes their spell and then basically keeps them on the board indefinitely. Feat of Resistance puts a 1/1 counter on it, and then it gains protection. This is actually kind of nice because it will turn Sigil Captain into a little bit more of a threat himself, since there's some cards we'll get into that care about 1/1 counters being on things. So in addition to being a protection spell, it does buff him up to a 4/4 and make him more of a threat. Safe Passage has kept me alive, and it just absolutely rules to pull out a Safe Passage when your opponent thinks he's got you dead to rights. You cast Safe Passage before blocks and then counter swing for lethal, possibly. That's a pretty good feeling right there. Chomano's Blessing. We do have enough white mana that I'm not too worried about this being double white, but it's just the same as Benevolent Blessing. It flashes onto a creature and gives it protection from that color. And then, I mean, come on, this isn't protection here, but target creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each creature you control. You likely have between 5 and 8 creatures at any time, so this can become a game-winning combat trick right there. And now I have a hard time playing anything with counters on it and not running a little bit of Proliferate. Unbounded Potential puts a 1/1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures, or proliferates. Usually we're proliferating, but then again, we can get extra value from this piece of cardboard by entwining it for 4 and getting both. Urban Daggertooth, he's a blocker that proliferates whenever he gets hit. So if your opponents want to swing on you, you can just go, yeah, I'll block with this guy. All of my things get bigger. I turn it around, hit your back. Pollen Bright Druid, it just proliferates when it enters. And Carnivorous Canopy, a little piece of removal that destroys target artifact, enchantment, or creature with flying. And then if that target's CMC was 3 or less, then you can proliferate as well. Why not just staple the word proliferate onto your removal spells? 4/4 that proliferates when it enters. Bloom Hulk, not bad. And Smell Fear. You proliferate, and then a creature you control fights up to 1 target creature you don't control. Most of these proliferate cards are kind of endgame tactics where you're wanting to actually make your entire wide board get a little bit bigger turn after turn. But if you got proliferate in the deck, and if you're me, you're gonna grab you some funguses. So we've got Vitaspore Thallid. You put a spore counter on it each of your upkeeps, then you can remove 3 to put a 1/1 Saproling into play. You can sacrifice Saprolings to give things haste. We're usually not doing that because this deck waits for a while and does one big swing. We don't care about things coming in with haste too much, but you can do it. And then also remember, these Saprolings are coming in as 3/3s. The classic Thallid, the 1 mana 1/1, gasp. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a spore counter. It does the fungus thing. Remove 3, create a Saproling. A Sporloff Ancient is a more late game play as well. It's the same thing, except that it buffs all of the funguses by giving them the ability to create Saprolings with just 2 spore counters. So all the proliferate stacks. Oh wait, one more. Oops. Thallid Shell Dweller is a 2 mana 0/5 with Defender. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a spore counter, blah, 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 blah. It makes Saprolings. If a card says Saproling, I am slotting it in there. I'm throwing it on the deck list. I'm kind of just like that. Then we've got a category of cards that are a little bit challenging to categorize. I just call them utility. Stuff like Crash and Drawbridge. It's a 2 mana 0/4 that can tap to give my creatures haste till end of turn. Shine Wind comes into play with a 1/1 counter, meaning it comes in as a 1/1. It gets those 2 1/1 counters from Sigil Captain, and then you can remove a 1/1 counter to destroy enchantments. It usually doesn't matter, but it's just nice to have a lot of enchantment removal, just in case someone's turning Sigil Captain into a vanilla whatever. Revoke Existence. Again, if we've got something that's oppressive, we're able to exile it an enchantment or a artifact, return to nature, same deal, enchantment, artifact, or target card from a graveyard. And Gnarlid Colony, he's a 2-mana 2/2 that gives all my creatures with +1/+1 counters on them haste. And then this was a recent addition, mostly because I thought it was funny. Safehold Elite is a 2-mana 2/2 with Persist. It might not be optimal, it's probably better in decks that have some kind of sack outlet, but because it has Persist, when it dies, it'll return to the battlefield with a -1/-1 counter on it. Because of the 2/2 base stats, that means it enters as a 1/1. Sigil Captain sees that, puts 2 +1/+1 counters on it, and now it's a 3/3 with Persist. So when it dies, it comes back in as a 1/1. It'll essentially come back over and over and over. So this is a perpetual blocker, or you can just continue throwing them at your opponents. A 3/3 that just won't die and can attack almost every turn seems pretty good for 2 mana. And now we've got the draw suite. Some of these technically aren't draw, they're more like cantrips, but I'm trying to pack as much as possible in here just to make sure you never have an empty hand. It's one of the worst feelings in Magic. You meet in a tavern doubles as a game winner too. It gives you 2 options. Look at the top 5 cards of your library, put any number of creature cards from among them into your hand, or creatures you control get +2/+2 till end of turn. So you could have a giant board of 5/5s when they used to be 1/1s, and maybe some are flying, lifelink, double strike, whatever. I've got totally clocked with this before. Absolutely clocked. Pie Knight, it's a 3-mana 1/1 that cantrips just a turn delayed. I think we can call this Pie Knight, but that, let me know in the comments. If I got that wrong, I'm sure you already have. Draw a card at the beginning of the upkeep. After the turn, Pie Knight comes into play. Elvish Visionary, strictly better than Pie Knight. It's just a 2-mana elf that draws a card when it enters. Raider's Carve, I actually love this one because it's crew 3, which means you can tap Sigil Captain to crew it, because Sigil Captain himself is not going to be swinging. When it attacks, I can look at the top card. If it's a land, I put it onto the battlefield. This will help you just dig through your deck a little bit more. It's not strictly draw per se, but it's also a 3-mana 4/4 that helps you dig through your deck. Deepwood Denizen is able to tap to draw a card, and it costs 1 less for each +1/+1 counter on creatures you control. So if you have 3 1/1s out, there are 6 1/1 counters on the battlefield probably. And so it costs a green to draw a card, and he has Vigilance. So you're doing it on the end step with the player to your right. And of course, Helpful Hunter, it's a 1/1 cat that draws you a card when it enters. And then Spirited Companion, it's a 1/1 dog that draws you a card when he enters. Warm Welcome is actually a little bit similar to you meet in a tavern, look at the top 5 cards, reveal a creature card, put it into your hand, and then you create a 1/1. We like those, as it turns out. I'm literally losing my mind from saying 1/1. Bonder's Ornament, the 3-cost mana rock that can tap for 1 mana of any color, but more what we're using it for is to pay 4 and tap it to draw a card. It's just nice to have in a pinch, and quite frankly, I recommend everyone put this in your Pauper EDH decks, every single deck, just because if you're at a table with people, it's kind of fun to have the political alliances of like, oh, I've got a Bonder's Ornament, you've got a Bonder's Ornament, let's both tap ours, we'll get a bunch of cards. More cards is more fun for everyone. Pilgrim's Eye, it's a 3-mana 1/1 with flying, and lets you search up a land. A little bit of thinning never hurt anybody. A little bit of flying 3/3 never did either. Same with Sky Scanner, 3-mana flying, when it enters the battlefield, draw a card. It's a 1/1. Skycrier, again, a 1/1 with flying and lifelink, pretty powerful by itself, and then you can pay 4 mana to draw a card and allow a friendly opponent to draw a card. It's great to make these deals. It's very fun to do this political stuff, in my opinion. Now, finally, the lands. We've got Evolving Wilds, of course. Blossoming Sands, when it enters, you gain a life. Selesnya Guildgate, it's bad. Thornglint Bridge, the indestructible artifact land. I don't think anyone's playing land hate in Pauper EDH, really. Botanical Plaza is actually kind of good for this deck, at least, because you can pay 4 and draw a card in a pinch. Creosote Heath, it just pings someone for 1. And then we've got the Raoul Vitali Forest there. And then the basics I'm not going to go through. You can look at the count on the deck list, which is in the description. You do want to make sure you've got your 2 white mana for Sigil Captain, because he's a little bit color intensive. But other than that, it's a pretty low mana curve, so we're not super worried about hitting all of our land drops. we're okay with having a little bit lower of a land count. So anyway, this deck is an absolute blast to play. As I often say, I don't share decks that I don't think are a blast to play. So if you want to check out the other 3 that I've made videos on, they're right here. Sigil Captain also just has this style of being this, like, my brain is refusing to think of a word other than Chungus, and I don't want to say Chungus, so I'll probably just cut this out. But he's just that boy. Like, he's him. And I'd love to hear y'all's opinion on intentionally choosing a suboptimal card because of the flavor and the art and just how much you enjoy it. I find that to be valid in just about any format, but especially Commander, and maybe even more so in Pauper Commander, where we're really not necessarily trying to hyper-optimize everything. A lot of this is just bulk out of my collection, and it's part of why I love Pauper EDH. I've been making these videos to try and support the format. Guys, go to the subreddit, Pauper EDH, and if you haven't liked and subscribed already, then I'll find you. Bye.